Applying for an MBA is so freaking hard. We've got to talk about it. I feel like it is not talked about enough how inundating the process can be. And if you're anything like me, I walked into it so unassuming, so naive, just so unprepared for what it is that I was about to be experiencing. And I feel like there's so many people who are in the same boat. So if you are somebody who's thinking about business school, you're in the process of applying to business school, you're considering going to business school, please take out your pen and paper because I'm about to give you 5 things that you should be doing before you even apply to go to business school, especially if you're thinking about going to a top program. And I highly suggest that you stay till tip number 5 because it's not only the best tip, but it's the most impactful tip that will make all the difference in your MBA application process. Hi, if you're new here, my name's Alyssa. I am a second-year MBA student at the Columbia Business School. I went to Spelman for undergrad, and I am just here for all things business, beauty, and lifestyle. So if that sounds like you, definitely make sure you like and subscribe for more content because over here, we love making business simple for the babes. Before we get to the 5 tips, I just want to give you a little bit of context on who I am as a person. So, as I mentioned, I went to Spelman for undergrad. I started my career in finance. I worked in asset management for 2 years before I transitioned into private equity, where I was for the next 3 years. Right before business school, I did a pre-MBA internship at a venture capital firm, and I would say most of my time in business school has largely been spent in the venture capital space. Now, taking us back a bit, I want to start with what led me to go to business school in the first place. So I was in my career in private equity. I was feeling burnt out and I knew I needed to make a change. I had no idea what was out there for me. And that was really my motivation for going to business school. I needed career clarity. So in 2022, I began applying for fellowships, specifically pre-MBA fellowships that would help me navigate the MBA application process and ultimately land me in the position that I am today. So in 2022, I submitted an application for a program called MLT. If you all are not familiar with them, they are great. Essentially, they are a fellowship for young Black and brown students who are looking to apply for their MBA. That began in 2022. I got accepted to the program in 2023. For the remainder of 2023, I would then go on to do everything from GMAT prep to visiting campuses, talking to students, meeting other people that I would be going to business school with. In December 2023, I submitted my application. And then in March of 2024, I found out I was admitted to Columbia Business School. And ultimately in the fall of that same year, I ended up attending. So you can see that this was almost a 2-year-long process. And what I feel like most people don't talk about is all of the things that you should be doing before you even go down that path. So with that, let's get into the 5 things that I think you should be doing if you are seriously considering going to business school. Number 1, if you are seriously considering business school, you need to take the GMAT or the GRE as of yesterday. Especially if you are an undergrad right now, you are in prime time to take the GMAT. And this is why. So many people wait until they are actually serious about getting ready to go to business school. Sometimes this will happen at the same time that the applications are due. But what people fail to mention is the GMAT/GRE is not your average exam. And you want to give yourself at least a 6-month to year-long lead time to get the score that you want, especially if you're trying to get into a top program like Columbia, like Wharton, like Stanford, like Harvard. You need a solid score that is going to get you over that line. Now, the reason why I say it is optimal to do it while you're an undergrad is because when you are an undergrad, you are taking all of the courses that effectively the GMAT or the GRE will reflect, specifically with regards to the math component section. I always beat myself up and I'm like, okay, as a girl who got pretty much all A's in math in undergrad, if I would have taken the GMAT while it was still top of mind, I know for a fact I would have knocked out the math component of the score. But instead, I had to spend literal months training myself on exponent rules, fraction rules, things that I knew cold in undergrad. And it makes me annoyed because I'm like, once again, why did somebody not tell me? Or maybe somebody did tell me and I just wasn't listening. The best time to take it was in undergrad. The next best time to take it is now. The point is, sooner rather than later, and I would say seriously, before you even think about coming up with a short list, get the GMAT and GRE under your belt. It is such a huge part of the process and it can literally be the reason why you don't move forward in it. So you should know sooner rather than later if that's going to be your process. The second thing I want to add on to this point is everybody's going to have their strengths and their weaknesses when it comes to how you take a test. When it comes to the GMAT or GRE, these are two very fundamentally different tests. The outlook, they may seem the same. They have a verbal component and they have a math component. You're gonna have to figure out which one is better for you, the GMAT or the GRE, but my number one tip here is take both exams. You can literally go take a practice exam. I believe it's on the ERS or ETF something website, where you can go take both for free. Figure out which one feels more natural to who you are. I always tell people, I think the GMAT is better for those who excel in quant. I think the GRE is best for those who excel in their verbal. Either way, they're pretty comparable, but you want to figure out if there's one where maybe you feel like you have more of an advantage. I took both tests. Ultimately, I ended up submitting my GRE score, largely because I had scored higher and I had spent more time with it, but also I just felt stronger taking that test because I knew that I can learn vocabulary and maximize my score here. The point is, take the GMAT and GRE as early as possible and make sure you take both tests first so you can figure out which one makes the most sense for you to spend your time on. My number two tip, if you are serious about getting into a top MBA program, is that you need to invest in a coach. Now, you will get a lot of different feedback from people about whether or not they feel like a coach is worth it, whether or not they feel like a coach actually made a difference. I can't speak to everybody's situation, but what I can talk about is my own. And I know for a fact, if I did not hire a coach, I would have been walking into the process completely blind. There are so many different nuances to the MBA application process that I feel like the average person just would not know, especially if you don't come, if you're first gen MBA, if you will, if you're first gen grad school. There's just so many components that I feel like if I had not had a coach show me, I would have probably done okay, but I'm not sure or confident that I would have gotten a full ride to the MBA program that I'm currently at, if you know what I mean. So just a few ways that the coach made a difference for me. One, I was in private equity at the time and my schedule was absolutely chaotic. It was just very unpredictable. And I knew I needed an accountability partner in the process to make sure that I wasn't missing deadlines, to make sure I was abreast about all of the different components of the application that I was going to be needing to submit. And I just needed somebody that was really going to help me through the timeline of it all. The second way in which a coach made a difference for me is there were parts of the narrative that I was trying to tell in my stories and my essays that I was just firing off like as if it was some regular essay. And I'm, once again, sure I would have been fine submitting those essays, but I feel like what the coach was able to do for me was bring structure to the way that I was thinking in a way where they were actually able to speak to, this is what admissions officers are looking for. Because the truth is, the application process for an MBA is very much a black box. There will be people with stellar scores who get rejected and people with average profiles that get accepted into the schools of your dreams, and it does not make any sense. I feel like the closest person to helping you make sense of it all is a coach. So with that, I would love to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Leland. If you are somebody who's serious about hiring a coach and you need a point of reference for where to start looking for the best coaches that are out there, I cannot stress enough the importance and significance of a platform like Leland. Leland is great because they have coaches literally from across the nation that have gotten into the most competitive MBA programs and or have helped candidates get into those programs, and they will literally walk you through every step of the process. So if you log onto the Leland website, I love it because as soon as you log onto the dashboard, you will see all of the main categories of coaches that they have. I obviously would tell you to then go and click into the MBA filter so that you get a broad range of all the MBA coaches that there are. You can scroll through and obviously see which ones appeal to you, but I would highly recommend using the filter feature. From the filter feature, you can filter down on things like how much money you're willing to pay / invest in a coach. You can filter into what schools that they went to and or have gotten candidates into. You can also focus on things like the different components of the application that you want specific help in. For some people, it's GMAT. For some people, it's essays. For some people, it's the interviews. All of those things you can hire a coach for on Leland. And what I really love about the platform is before you clear that first payment, you can do a free intro call to get to know the coach a little bit better. Because one thing I'm not here for is paying people money where it's not earned, where it's not deserved, or where it doesn't make sense. And for me, when I think about this, it's a coach should be aligned not only in terms of your goals, but it should be a personality fit as well. So you may need to date a few coaches, if you will, before you find the right one. But I guarantee you, on Leland, you can find it. And the number one MBA coach that I will recommend is my friend and Spelman sister, Jillian Woodard. She's currently a second-year MBA student at Harvard Business School. I believe she got accepted into almost every program that she applied to, from Harvard to Wharton to Columbia to Duke. She got into every program, so she knows something about something, and I would highly recommend that you check her profile out. So please give it a try. Let me know what you guys think. If you want to get to the platform directly, I've included the link in my bio. I would so appreciate it if you guys would use this link specifically. But either way, please let me know how it goes, and please keep me posted on your process when it comes to finding a coach. And thank you, Leland, so much for sponsoring today's video. Our tip number 3. If you are serious about getting into a top MBA program, I cannot stress enough the importance of going to go visit the schools. Going to go visit the schools is so crucial for so many different reasons. It will give you context, right? It is one thing to see the websites, it's one thing to hear about it from your friends, but it's a whole nother thing to actually step foot on campus and understand, do I like this environment? Does it feel fitting for me? If I'm in Philadelphia, do I love the fact that I'm in the middle of Rittenhouse Square? If I'm in Columbia, do I like the idea of living in Harlem or Morningside Heights or the Upper West Side? If I go all the way out to Boston, can I stand the cold? Like, those are the things you should be asking yourself, because yes, it's about the degree, but this is also a 2-year experience living in a city that maybe you've been familiar with, maybe you've not. But I think going to go visit the schools in person will give you so much more clarity about whether or not you actually see yourself staying there. The second reason why I think it is so important to go visit the schools is because it will give you something to speak about in your essays. And this is something that I feel like a lot of candidates miss out on. As somebody who's done mock interviews, one of the questions I'm always asking students, trying to get them prepared for their actual interviews, is tell me about how you've engaged with Columbia up to this point. That is a common question that is going to come up in your interview. And the reason is, it's an easy way for admissions officers to understand your commitment to the school. And if you've never even stepped foot on campus, you've never attended a virtual webinar, you don't know a single admissions officer's name, you've never met an alumni, you're going to have a pretty hard time convincing that admissions officer that you actually want to go to that school, even if you actually do. So I highly advise taking the time, finding an event, going to a conference, booking the flight, and traveling to go see the city, both for your sake as well as the sake of the application process itself. Now, getting close to the end here, tip number 4, if you were serious about going to business school and you want to get into the MBA program of your dreams, I cannot stress enough the importance of having conversations with current students. I think there's so much information that is available on the websites for you to understand the school better, right? They will teach you on the websites. You can find everything from the academic curriculum to the professors to the different clubs that you can join, the initiatives that exist on campus, which that's all great information, but you've got to understand that a lot of that is just marketing. And it's not because, and I don't mean that in a way where it's a negative connotation, but more so in the sense of, the schools want to attract you, but what you're not going to find on the website is the true, real, like, culture piece of the school. They may allude to it, but you won't really figure that out until you begin having conversations with current students. And when you're talking to current students and alumni, the questions you should be asking are things like, tell me about your experience on campus. Tell me about the social culture. Are people here competitive? Are people here collaborative? Tell me about what you guys do on the weekends when you're not in classes. Is it fun here? Is there anything to do here? Like, those are the things you should be asking, and it should be personal to who you are. Obviously, those questions may not be relevant to you if you don't care about those things, but I think my point is you can get so much more information about your day-to-day living in terms of what you expect for that school environment by having conversations with current students and alumni. And I think also, to that same point, having the conversations with alumni can help you understand where your career outcomes might land. So the questions you should be asking alumni is, how impactful was Columbia Business School, for example, in where you landed today? Was this something where you were having to do a lot of the legwork to get there, or was it something where you could leverage a resource at Columbia, like for example, our career office? Did you leverage that to get this opportunity? Do you feel like alumni are responsive if you reach out to them, right? Like, those are the things you want to start to gauge, because it will tell you so much about the school, the culture, what you can expect. And I just feel like this is also something, going back to my point in number 3, that you can speak about in your essays. If you've never had conversations with current students and alumni, I'm questioning whether or not you actually are serious about going to this school. And through those conversations, you will also begin to understand what's not being said, right? For better or for worse, but really what you're trying to extract is those data points that you know most people won't talk about, but you want to understand, like, oh, like, this club is the one who actually really runs the show on campus, or this club really doesn't have great resources that you can leverage for this type of career path. Those are the things you want to extract in those conversations. And I just think that If you do this, you will begin to be able to see yourself much more clearly at one school versus the other. For example, one thing that came clear to me in my conversations with students at Harvard was the case study method. I started, initially Harvard was the only school that I wanted to go to, but as I began to learn more and more about the program, it wasn't that it wasn't a great program, I don't know if it was going to be a great fit for me. The case study method is great for certain topics and subjects. However, for an accounting course, how do you teach somebody how to be a great accountant if you don't actually ever pull out an Excel spreadsheet, if you don't pull out a financial statement? And once again, with Harvard, it was through the conversations with students that I started to realize that this is a real impediment. If you're somebody coming in and you want to land in high finance and you're going to Harvard, you might find it challenging because nobody's ever going to sit down to teach you how to put together a financial model, at least within the context of the classroom. So those are the type of things you want to begin to understand through the conversations that you have with current students and alumni. Number 5, you made it here. Definitely one of the most important, if not the most important tip that I have for you guys. It is that you need to get clear on your why before you apply to business school. And I cannot stress this enough, so I'm going to say it again. Before you even think about applying to your MBA, you need to get clear on your why. It is so important to get clear on your why for so many different reasons, but I'm going to start with the fact that knowing your why will be your anchor in this process. There are so many ups and downs, and it's such a tumultuous process. Every day brings new surprises, and I just think that if you don't have an anchor, if you're not sure about why you're doing this, you probably will find yourself out of the process. In fact, I know when I was applying, I applied through a fellowship where we started with over 300 people. By the time we had gotten down to the actual application process, there were only about 200 of us still actively moving through the process, and I think that's just a testament to this process can take so much out of you, and if you don't have a clear why, it will make it very difficult to proceed further. The second and probably most important reason why I think it's super important to have a why, it is going to come up so often in the process, from the essays to the interviews to the conversations you have. And I think the sooner that you can get clear on that conviction, that why, you will be able to tell your story better. It is not enough to say, I want to go to business school because I want to work at Deloitte following school. Like, yes, that's great, but why is that going to change your life? That is what admissions officers want to know. Like, if you don't come to Columbia, if you don't get the MBA, will your trajectory be altered? And if admissions officers get the sense that, oh, they don't actually need this as their next step, it's more of a nice to have, it's not a need to have, I'm not saying you won't get in, but I'm saying it makes for a much harder case versus somebody who's like, no, I need to go to business school because I want to work in finance. I've never seen a balance sheet before. I need to understand how these things work. This is the only environment where I can learn these things successfully, and that is why I need to get my MBA. You see how that's just a much different story. It's much more compelling in terms of why I need to be here, why this has to happen now, why you guys need to give me admittance to your program. That is the story that you want to be able to tell. And once again, your story doesn't have to be that, but you need to figure out why and if and why an MBA is critical. And honestly, even more than that, an MBA, as great as it has been for me, I would say it's not for everybody. And I think if more people did that introspection and understood who they are as a person, whether or not this actually makes sense for them. Am I doing this because everybody else is doing it, or am I doing it because it actually makes sense? Am I doing this to get to my next level? And if so, how is that going to help me? If people started to ask those questions, I think we'd see more people here or in these MBA environments moving with intention rather than getting on the other side of it and feeling like this is a scam, or that it wasn't worth the investment, or it wasn't worth the time or the money or whatever. And I think a huge part of that is people getting clear on their why ahead of time. So with that, I am absolutely rooting for every single person that has made it to this point in the video, because I know you are serious about getting your MBA, and I believe with my whole heart that it is for you and that it will happen. It's only a matter of time. But my biggest advice is approach this process strategically and with intention, and you absolutely will win. Love you guys. Can't wait to see you in my next video. And if you have any other requests, as always, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks.